Okay, we're going to get started with this talk now. Today Ben will be speaking, and Ben lives with his wife and dog in the Washington, D.C. area. He currently works at Bible Project as a director of operations, working alongside the CEO and executive team on the organization's strategy, operating model, structure, and data analytics. Previously, he worked in management consulting for about 4 years and thought about being an economics professor. He moved around a lot as a kid, but went to high school across the street from here. Also, while Ben's talk, if you guys have any questions, you can put it in Slido, which is in your swap card.
Thank you. Sweet. Thanks, y'all. In high school, I was a runner, did track and cross country, so I have so many bad memories of this seminary because we used to run laps around here. It's really nice to be back in with some good memories. So also it's 2 p.m. So can everyone do a favor, maybe stand up for a second and shake something out, or it's kind of warm in here too. If you're at home, you can do something really weird, so a bit of a stretch or something. Just I'm falling asleep a little. So okay. Thanks so much. This talk is about reading the Bible and about working in operations, and I guess why you should definitely do this, and maybe you should do this. So most people don't read the Bible or don't read the Bible much, and I think that's too bad. I think the Bible is really cool. It's pretty amazing. It tells a story that leads up to Jesus. It's got wisdom for today too, and so I'm trying a little bit in my work to do something about that, and so I'd like to share about that. So we're going to talk through 3 things. Here's the plan for EA folks, reading the Bible as a problem area, as a focus area, as a cause area. I want to talk a bit about what it's like to work in operations. That's one of those job profiles over on 80,000 hours. And then some suggestions on how to know if that's a good fit for you. Basically, I want to convince some of y'all that reading the Bible is a good cause area, really reading the Bible as a problem area, and then hopefully share some tips, some advice, at least in my N of 1 experience. So before we jump in, want to be upfront a bit about me and where my biases are. So y'all said, I'm currently working at this place called Bible Project in an operations role, so hence the topic. Maybe that wasn't clear yet. Previously, I did management consulting and some economic stuff, so I like numbers, so that's kind of why I'm here with y'all. And then just a disclaimer, I'm here on my own, so the views, opinions, mistakes, those are mine. I'm not representing Bible Project or any other counterfactual employer as well. So I'm going to start with some rhetorical questions that are mostly personal to me, but maybe some of these are going to resonate with you too. So do some of the Old Testament narratives make you uncomfortable or worse? And you don't have to raise your hand, but maybe there's a nodding along. Most of these are mine. Have you ever skipped over Leviticus or Deuteronomy, or especially Numbers? Have you ever suggested someone start in Mark? Have you ever been in Chronicles and been I just read this? Yeah. Have you ever felt embarrassed about something in the book of Genesis? There's an Isaac Asimov quote, something about properly read, Bible's a great force for atheism. Maybe you've nodded along with that. One that's been challenging for me, sometimes it's thinking about, is anything missions related, really a high impact cause area? Because isn't it better to save people's lives versus trying to figure out the Bible something? All of that is important. So I would love to invite you on a brief journey of some of my personal experience over the last couple of years. So starting with some food for thought, these are some examples of some people in the Bible talking about reading the Hebrew Bible, what Christians usually call the Old Testament. So I know that's really small because you don't really need to read it, but in Luke chapter 2, there's a story about this man named Simeon who is waiting in the temple for the Messiah, and when Jesus comes in with his parents to get a blessing, Simeon freaks out and just starts quoting Isaiah all over the place. And how does he know that? I don't know. how does someone like Simeon read the Hebrew Bible? I'm not the first one to say this, but I'm so interested in, like, how is he reading this? Another one, some food for thought, Psalm 119, which is the longest psalm, longest chapter in the Bible. And it's this giant acrostic poem about how much, whoever's writing this, about how much they love the law, like how much they love the Torah, a big part of the Hebrew Bible. And then another example, this is Jesus. This is from the Gospel of Luke, but in the famous story on the road to Emmaus, talking to some people who were Jesus followers. This is after Jesus' resurrection, and he tells them that, hey, the whole Hebrew Bible, the law of Moses, the prophets, and the Psalms are written about him. So a bunch of people have slowly taught me, I have these questions and problems, but I really need to read this. But instead, here was my experience for a long time, is that I would dutifully read a chapter or two of the Bible in the morning so that I could tally off that I had read it. Got through Psalms 3 times over a course of a couple years. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's wonderful to read the Bible daily. But the thing is, the problem was I was so far from delight and love and joy. I'm doing this, and this is what people are saying the Hebrew Bible is like. So what gives? What is up with that? So how to solve that problem, this disconnect between love and delight and joy and the experience that I'm having, or maybe you have had. For me, the solution has been zooming out and seeing the Hebrew Bible on its own terms as a unified collection of literature about a coming Messiah. But how do we get there? So Jesus talks here about the law of Moses and the prophets and the Psalms. What does he mean about that? One way to get there is to go back to scrolls. So Dolly made this for me, but back in Jesus' times, we talk about the law, the prophets, and the Psalms as a way of shaping the Hebrew Bible. Jesus didn't have the study Bible that I've got at home from a printing press. They had scrolls, and scrolls is a technology. You've got a pile of scrolls, and how do you know what order they go in? How they're connected? Well, you can look at the edges, because when you unfurl a scroll and roll it back up, the edges are going to be what gets worn down the most. And when you do that, there's these really amazing patterns at the seams of the Tanakh. Is a traditional, very old way to structure the Hebrew Bible. There's, I think, pretty broad scholarly agreement of the shape. So that stands for the Torah, the Nevi'im, and the Ketuvim, which is just, it's a slightly different order than how a typical English Bible is printed now. There's a lot of good evidence for that. And when you look at those seams, oh, by the way, if you just want to ignore me and start learning about this, you should scan this QR code. But I'll see you if you pull out your phone. It's really amazing. I'm not going to do this justice at all, but the end of Deuteronomy over there, the end of the Torah, talks about how the people of Israel need a prophet like Moses. And then in the beginning of Joshua, there's a link right there between the two of someone saying, hey, pay attention between these two things. Where in Joshua, it's talking about now there's this next person to take on that mantle of what they need. And then over in Malachi, at the very end of the middle section, Malachi's talking about how there needs to be someone who's going to remember the law, a prophet like Elijah, someone more like Moses too. I'm not going to pull up all the words, but it's so connected. And then the beginning of Joshua talks about how Joshua should meditate on the law day and night, which is exactly how the Psalms open in Psalm 1, that you need someone, the good life belongs to someone who's meditating on the law day and night. And then Psalm 2 also talks a lot about this future king coming. It's the same, there's so much link between the end of Malachi. So the way that Jesus talks about the scriptures maps onto the way that lots of people back then at the time were talking about the Bible maps onto the actual organization, maps onto the technology of scrolls. It's so amazing. There's so much more, but that's not the point of the talk, so I want to keep going. too long, you stop paying attention. Like, I am loving reading the Bible more than ever before. I'm convinced that if it would really make a difference if more people got to see the Bible this way and learn to appreciate some of the literary beauty, and there's so much more that comes out of it, to read it more like Simeon, more like the psalmist, more like Jesus did as well. So the reason I think this is a problem on like an EA level is that, and this is not the math, but I know the difference this has made to me personally. It's been a big difference in my life and in my faith. And so I think if there were more communities of people meditating on the Bible day and night, that would be really truly transformational, that would be good for human flourishing. So that's the pitch for this as a problem area. If that's a problem area, what are some solutions? Well, here's one solution, one small part of that is a nonprofit called Bible Project, which happens to be where I'm currently working. It's a nonprofit educational organization helping people learn how to read the Bible. Not as I'd love to know how many people have like heard of Bible Project. Just a quick show of hands so I can help Taylor. That's really amazing. Thanks, y'all. I don't know if you're at home. Sorry, you can still raise your hand. The mission statement of Bible Project is to help people experience the Bible as a unified story that leads to Jesus. What that means, there's a whole podcast series if you want to unpack that more, but I just did a really bad like 5-minute version of what that means. The Bible Project as an organization started out as an animation studio. Many of you may have seen some of the videos, especially the book overview videos about different books of the Bible, making explainer videos, posting on them on YouTube. Now there's much more. There's a podcast that happens every week. There was an app that was launched at the start of 2022, and lots of different features getting built out there. And now there's classes as well. These are like graduate level depth, not necessarily like the structure, but there's asynchronous classes that you can take anytime, but they're filmed around a table with a real group of people. And those are really great. And then Bible Project, and there's more. And they give it all away for free because it's a nonprofit and it's crowdfunded. This is like a really bad business model, by the way. I don't necessarily recommend it. But they give it away for free, which I think is really amazing. And I think that this matters enough that I had the privilege to work here for a bit and left a totally different career path because I thought that the work they were doing was really impactful. So that gets us to part 2. We'd love to talk about what it's like working in operations at a nonprofit, and I'm going to compare it to the 80,000 hours career profile a bit too. So at Bible Project, the way that we talk about operations is that the team is leading our strategy, operating system, work structure, and data and analytics. Operations, the way we're doing it's pretty generalist. It's not really like being an individual contributor. There's a lot of my work is either supporting the executive team or coming alongside another team and supporting them in their work. There's not a typical day. Sometimes it's taking a bird's eye view to what we're doing, and sometimes it's getting really in the weeds of our particular process or idea or something like that. In general, the types of projects I work on, I try to think around 3 different priorities, which are elevating the thinking of what we're doing, improving our processes, or creating positive change in different parts of the organization. And there are a couple examples I wanted to share that I thought were impactful, and to be clear, I deserve like very little credit for each of these in particular. I wasn't the only one doing it. It's definitely a team effort, with some examples where of sort of operations-ish work partnering alongside other parts of the team. So one example, we, with the marketing team, we're looking at YouTube data and thinking through how to best invite and engage that audience. And if you've seen the poster doodle videos that were some of the first ones that Bible Project made, we made a change to the title of those on YouTube. They were called Book Overview, and then we changed that to Book Summary. And what we saw was it made such a difference on the click-through rate within YouTube, the SEO of it. Just like summary is something that people search for much more than overview, and because of that, millions more people each year are seeing those videos, being shown them from the way that YouTube and Google recommend things. So that was a cool example. Another example I was thinking about was the product I mentioned, Classroom, grew by about an order of magnitude due to some changes in the marketing and the distribution. So this was, again, something I didn't have a ton to do with, but I got to help pull together sort of the big picture for this. And so there was some email campaigns and a little bit of paid marketing, and then the changes to the distribution. One that was really small was moving the word classroom from behind a menu on the website to one of the words that's the top level menu. Tons more people were finding it that way. And it made a huge difference. And then classes on the app, which started last summer, was just a much easier way to find that product. So another example of work that I think is really exciting. And then a different one, think about org structure. We flipped our org chart upside down. It's actually been like this the whole time, but the way that we talk about management is that you're moving further down the org chart. It's really more like a demotion. And so across the whole organization, that's how the org chart looks like, is upside down, which, by the way, is like what the original org chart, where the whole thing comes from, is from someone working on the Erie Canal, who had to organize the railroad stuff. Was getting really complicated and drew like a tree, and it was upside down. So at some point, people started flipping it the other way. This is a small thing, but we find this, like, I think this is personally a helpful way to remember and talk about leadership in an organization. So if you're leading something, think about flipping it upside down. Yeah.
It's good to turn it upside down because that gives more credit to people that are doing all
Totally,
the
who
work
are doing
as well.
the actual work.
But
Yeah.
is it also, was there also a management strategy that was different?
Yeah, I wasn't there when the decision was made to say, hey, we're going to put it upside down. That might actually be from the very beginning. I think that personally, my opinion is like this helps shape just the way that any leader thinks about it. And so those kind of things are subtle, but it's not an explicit necessarily way to talk about it. But we have phrases like, hey, you're moving down the organizational chart, that I think helps with sort of how do you approach leadership. Yeah. Okay, so we have time. The other thing I wanted to do was offer some comments on the 80,000 hours job profile. So this was my slippery slope into winding up here, was, hey, what should I do with my career? If you want to ignore me, you can scan this QR code and just start reading this instead of listening to that. Can you all on the left see that? So there's a whole job profile on this. So before this weekend, I went back and tried to reread it and think through what I agreed with, what I didn't, having done this job path for a little bit. Of course, this is N of 1, just my experience. So, I mean, a bunch of this is going to be wrong. But overall, I agree a lot with this guide. There's, I think the summary is really good. People in operations roles are multiplying, maximizing the productivity of others in the organization. I think that's very true. I try to think of my role as helping set these other amazing humans up to do their best work. That's really what it's about. And then I'll talk a bit more. So some big parts where I agree with that is that enabling others is kind of the point of operations. That frame, I think, is really true and helpful. Filling in gaps, I think the job profile talks about that, and I agree with that too. If you're like, hey, whose job is this? Then it might be operations. That's a good place to go. I think I also agree in the job profile they talk about, hey, maybe this isn't suited for everyone, and I definitely agree with that. It's not because you have to be special to do this, but there's sometimes a lot of ambiguity, sometimes leading through influence, doing a lot of different projects, wearing multiple hats. That's not necessarily to everyone's strengths. Some things that I agree with less in terms of specifically the 80,000 hours profile. I think my experience, I've done a lot more strategy and analytics work than that guide sort of suggests. It frames operations roles a bit more within support or administrative or running an office, and that's definitely true, but I don't think it emphasizes enough the opportunity to influence and shape strategy and other decision making. So if you're thinking about that type of role, using data to inform decisions, I think that's where there's a lot of leverage available. It definitely depends on the leadership team and the organization, but I think that's missing from that job profile. I think there's a bit of an over focus on systems. Systems is definitely an important part of operations, so I don't disagree that it's in there, but I have spent less time building new systems, more time adjusting them. So I think the job profile maybe over-focuses a bit on that. That probably depends a lot on the stage or the age of an organization, I would imagine. And then there's something in there about like the impact of your work is indirect, which makes it less tangible, so maybe that's harder to stay motivated. That just hasn't been, in my experience, I don't think that's wrong, but it felt when I reread the guide like, oh, that's kind of a bit of a discouragement. And that just hasn't been, personally my experience, in terms of where the motivation is. So so overall I get like an 8 out of 10. We gotta put some numbers on here. So definitely go read that. The QR code was before. How to know if you, did I write this down? Yeah, nope. How to know if you would be interested in an operations type role. I think a couple big ones are if you feel like you have an optimization mindset, and so if you look, that's kind of the part from the profile I agree with the most, is an optimization mindset. If you look at a process and you kind of take it personally when something, like why are we doing this way, we could do it a bit differently, I think that would be better. If you're taking that personally, that's a good kind of nudge towards a sort of operations hat role. If you like being a jack of all trades, and then I'm going to suggest a book here. So some suggested next steps. That first part, want to learn more about reading the Bible, I definitely personally recommend the class called Introduction to the Hebrew Bible. You can scan that QR code, it'll take you right to the app or the website. If you are interested in supporting the Work of Bible Project, you can go to the website, there's a QR code there. There's a prayer email list. There's some jobs. I believe there's a engineering manager role open if there's any software engineering folks here. And then if you are curious about exploring operations roles, here's my number one recommendation, is to check out this book called Scaling People, which is a book by the former COO of Stripe. Her name is Claire Hughes Johnson. Here's why I recommend this book. It will be either horribly boring or it'll be very interesting. That's my hypothesis. And so if it's really interesting, good sign that maybe an operations type role is good for you. So maybe try the library first if you think it might be really boring. So, okay, I'm gonna leave these up in case you want to try to grab the code. But sorry, I went really fast, but I'd rather have more time for questions. So thanks for giving me a chance to share.
So if you guys have any questions, you can put them in Slido, and we'll take like 5 minutes maybe to put those in. We do have one though, if you want to start.
Yeah.
And it says, why did you drop the from the Bible Project?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I wasn't at the organization when this happened, but I think I'm trying to think if there's a little behind the scenes video about it, but I think there were 2 reasons. One was kind of how Facebook went from the Facebook to Facebook. It's a bit of as an organization matures. The other one that I think is great is like this isn't the only Bible related project, and so I think there's some value to framing it a bit differently. Not calling it the Bible Project, it's more like a Bible project. However, it took a long time for that change to roll through, so no offense taken if you still call it the Bible Project.
The next one is, how did you get into effective altruism?
I, in college, was thinking about what the heck do I want to do with my life, and I found the 80,000 Hours Career Guides as a helpful framework for that, and so that was a bit of a slippery slope, and then thanks to JD, I don't think is in the room right now, kind of that's been my connection to the community here in DC. Yeah.
And what has been the most challenging part of your career?
Oh man, that's a great question. So I'm 5 years out of school. I don't think I can speak to a whole career. Thank you to whoever asked that. I'd kind of rather hear your answer. Personally, I find like making decisions hard. So kind of thinking about what's next is always a challenging part for me. I don't know. I love if there was something maybe more specific someone was thinking about there. Happy to try to share more.
There's no more? Oh wait, there's just one. What is the most fundamental quality you believe a person should have to be effective?
Man. That's a hard question. I don't know. I'm not smart enough for that question. Oh, an ops person, thank you. Anyone in life. Operations. I think the optimization mindset is the one, because it's a lot of work internal to an organization, and so specifically, if you find yourself being like, wait, like, why are we doing it that way? I think this could be smoother or more effective. If that feels a bit personal, instead of like, oh, well, that's how we do it. I think that's a helpful mindset. I'm sure that you can learn that, but I think that's an important part.
Mm-hmm.
So.
In what ways is the Bible Project more effective than other organizations in this space?
Yeah, I figured people would start asking those. In what ways is the Bible Project more effective? I don't know the answer to that, and I don't even know if it's true. I know that Bible Project is reaching millions of people a year. It's really amazing to see how many people here had heard of the organization. I don't know if I could claim that it's more effective. One way that I've heard people at Bible Project talk about it is, well, it's crowdfunded, and so it'll stop when it stops being effective because people won't give it any money. And so I know that's not the like rigorous EA evaluation, but one way to think about effectiveness is that some people are finding that media content products transformational enough in their own lives to give to it and support. And I think that is evidence of that being effective, but RCT is pending if anyone wants to run that. That'd be cool.
RCT?
Not really, sorry, I'm being
No,
sarcastic.
I know.
Oh, like a randomized controlled trial.
Or
I
like
don't,
an A/B test?
yeah.
Do you do those?
Not on like no Bible Project versus.
No, like
I'm sorry if I'm missing
like
something.
on the website.
Yeah. Oh, on the website. No, not at the level of Facebook or something. Yeah. Those YouTube titles were kind of the foray into A/B testing.
Is there any openness to EA principles at Bible Project?
I don't know the answer to that. I think I'm open to the framework and find it helpful. I can't speak for everyone there. I think that I made my pitch for like reading the Bible as a cause area, but it gets really fuzzy when you try to measure like transformation of someone's heart. I know there are people, I'm sure some of you here, who are thinking hard about how to do that. It's not something that I'm aware of this organization trying to do at scale, for sure.
Mm-hmm. And how do you handle AI possibly affecting generative content around the Bible?
That's a great question. How do we handle AI? So a piece of work that I was glad to work on was sort of a first internal draft of a framework for how to think about what AI tools we may or may not use. So that was a helpful starting point within the organization to get that conversation going. I can't speak for like everyone, but I think there's lots of ways that AI will be helpful in reading the Bible. I made a little tool script for myself to ship off a bunch of different translations to ChatGPT of a verse and tell me like, hey, what are the differences? Like, what are the words that have been hard to pick out? And I found that helpful for a little bit in my study. So I think there's lots of ways this sort of thing can be useful. I think this person asked about in content, and yeah, if there's other content creators here, like I think there will be a lot more content out there. And so I don't know if you have thoughts on how to help content stand out. I think it's going to be really hard. The media landscape is going to probably change over the next couple of years. And then like trusting a language model to explain something really complicated, like the more complex something is, then and the more room for nuance, the harder that is. So nothing Bible Project is that's public facing is generative AI at the moment. Yeah.
What has been the best marketing strategy you've found so far?
I am not a marketer, but I've gotten to work with the marketing team here at Bible Project, which has been really fun. They are great. Here's my opinion, and this will be a pain, but probably my opinion is that like the marketing tricks and SEO are like the 20%, not the 80%, and that making good content, good resources, good podcasts, that's 80%. I think distribution is probably going to get harder, but most effective marketing strategy, I do not have a grab bag of tricks. Let me think though. One thing we did find with Classroom was that the way to talk about that mattered a lot. So emphasizing that it was free. If you just go on the Classroom website, you'll see what we learned were the most helpful ways to talk about that resource. That it's free, that it's at your own pace, that it's kind of bite-sized, but that it is in depth. And so as a newbie to marketing, I was surprised at how big a difference it made, how something is framed. So if you're thinking about how to market or distribute something you're working on, I was personally surprised to learn how much of a difference that made. So really understanding, hey, what is the value of this being offered to the audience, I think is important.
This one says, in the prior graph showed paid ads resulted in a huge spike. Are we talking about going from $0 to 100 or 0 to 10,000 per month?
0 to $100 or 0 to
0 to 100 or 0 to 10,000?
More the latter, spread out over a while, but actually that chart was kind of showing the jump there was two things at once because the Classroom was on the app at the same time. So the biggest difference there was definitely Classroom being available on the app. We saw a lot more people using it then. I'm also not a paid marketing expert. I think that there's some quip that a CMO will say, half of my marketing spend is really working and half is useless. I just don't know which half. So there's plenty of room to. I think we found that there were lots of ways to have effective paid marketing at a lower cost by really diving in. So, sorry, did I answer that question? I think that was not hundreds of dollars. It was more than that.
This one says, what's your favorite book of the Bible?
I am partial to Isaiah. Yeah, but I don't know.
Okay, are there any more questions?
Yeah.
Excuse me. The Bible Project had a significant role in my decision after 50 years of spiritual search to become a Christian this past January. And I think it's a wonderful resource, but I think it could even do multiples more good. Can't quantify how much good it's already doing, but it could do multiple more good. It not only leads to Jesus, but then nudges people to lead to following Jesus in actions.
Yeah. Absolutely. Thanks for sharing that. Really appreciate your story.
Yeah. The people that speak very eloquently about Hebrew for tzedakah, social justice, and righteousness, but there's no specific action that's clear to Christians in general.
Yeah.
And specifically, you might be able to help make clear for your audience.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. Happy to pass on.
And Isaiah 58 is a key chapter on this.
Cool. I will go read that this afternoon. In terms of, hey, Bible Project's not, that's a point well taken, and we get that feedback sometimes for sure. This organization is not a replacement for a church or something like that. Learning, the hope is that you will then go read the Bible and read it in a church community or a community of your own too. And I think that's much more where learning to live a life walking with Jesus can be found, rather than trying to put everything right here. But thanks for sharing that.
Can I say a follow-up
Yeah.
comment? I think the Bible Project can be seen as something in a leadership role in the body of Christ, and I'm urging it to consider, and I'll have to talk to you further after this class, to take the next step in helping reconcile the body of Christ and reconcile Christians to the larger society.
Yeah. I would be so pumped to talk more about that. I really enjoyed Caleb's talk yesterday. I think unification of the church would be something important. So. Any other questions?
It's not mine,
Yeah.
and I don't think you said it. Is Bible Project non-denominational, or is it geared towards Orthodox, Catholic, or Protestantism interpretations? Where do most employees fall in the spectrum?
Bible Project does not have a denominational affiliation. If you go on the website, you can find a little bit more info about that, but there's not a denominational affiliation, and part of that is a desire to just focus on what's unifying instead of what's disunifying, and that would be the short answer. I don't know the personal story for everyone there, but I've really enjoyed learning about different people's faith backgrounds. There's many different parts of Christianity represented there and not. On the website, there's a bit about like the full leadership team and the board would all affirm the historic Orthodox creeds of the church. Did I answer your question?
That was definitely my question.
Yeah.
I also have another one that this is my question. Are Tim and John as pop as they seem in the videos and podcasts?
As what?
As pop. I don't know. Do they have the Riz? I'm not sure what's happening.
Sorry. I'm not current anymore. Is that how you would describe pop? Yeah.
I think they're, yeah.
Yeah.
Looks maxing? Are they looks maxing? No? Am I hitting those? I know what's up. Yeah?
They're great. I really like Tim and John. They're amazing. Yeah.
This sounds like an interview question, but it's not. I'm just really curious. Like, what's it like actually working for the Bible Project? Like, do you have prayer meetings every week? Do you do like Bible studies together? Like, what kind of things do you do like as part of your like culture?
Yeah, that's a great question. Just like any other business or nonprofit, there's not any required prayer, required Bible study. That's not how HR works. So there's actually not a ton of that. There is a really fun group of it gets kind of meta, but people that are working there and are big fans, and so we'll get together of hey, we want to just nerd out about this thing together, and that's been super fun. So, but I mean, it's not a church. It's not a ministry where that's necessarily part of the rhythms of an organization.
Here's another one. Are there any organizational challenges you're facing right now?
Yes, because every organization has challenges. Yeah. I feel like I shouldn't go on the record with my opinions on most challenges, but yeah. So Bible Project's about 130 full-time people. If you pull up the 990, the budget's about 25 million now. So there's all kinds of challenges that come with growth of that scale over a couple years, and just with running an organization and trying to do it well. So,
And are there any exciting projects you're working on right now?
yes, stay tuned.
I love it.
Yeah.
Does the Bible Project have any strategies to target Bible literacy among young people?
Yeah. So anything specific for thinking about? Yeah. Something that's been cool, Bible Project has started putting out some videos that are vertical, called scrollable, that are shorter and vertical, and so make a bit more sense for an audience on platforms like Instagram Reels or YouTube Shorts or TikTok. I think that I'm sure there's room for other organizations to do a really effective job reaching that generation. I'm barely in Gen Z, so I wouldn't speak for everyone, but yeah, I think it's a different generation that's very online and things. So I think that having seen some of our demographic breakdown, it's pretty distributed evenly, so I don't know if it's the most effective resources for that generation. But there's room for that.
Are there any more questions? No? Okay, we're gonna close off in prayer quickly. So I'm gonna pray for you quickly. Lord, I thank you for Ben, and I thank you for the Bible Project and the impact they're having and the work he's specifically doing there too. And I pray that they'd continue to reach many, many people, bringing unbelievers to you and helping believers grow in their faith. And I pray that you would give him strength and wisdom and guidance as he continues his journey, and that you would favor him and bless him as he's helping building up your kingdom. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thanks, y'all.
Thank you.